Okay. So I'm sorry we're going to have to go over this ground again. It's 5:07. I'd like to call the Town of Fairfield Ethics Commission meeting to order. The purpose of our meeting is to hear, consider, and act upon a request by the town attorney for an advisory opinion, which is set forth in the notice, which his opinion was attached to the notice. Attorney Baldwin, the town attorney, is here to make a presentation. And again, Attorney Baldwin, if you wouldn't mind, just for the record, just restating what it is that you're asking us to do. And then I'll try to restate the points that I brought up, and we can move from there.
Fair enough. I get a second bite of the apple here. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the meeting tonight. It must be nice to get together. It's been a long time, and I hope that it stays that way for everybody's sake. But that being said, the purpose of this request is not specific to any particular situation that's presented itself. Rather, it is a question that came to my mind when we were most recently going over the new appointments that come in a flurry in November and December for all these boards and commissions that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen or the first select woman, as the case may be. And I did do some research of the electronic files of my predecessors, Stanton Lesser and Eileen Kennelly, and I could not find any opinions that were remotely close to the situations that I've presented to you with my questions presented. And so I think that I would like to get ahead of the curve and use this commission for the purpose for one of its main purposes, which is to, rule on conflicts of interest, potential conflicts of interest, and to issue an advisory opinion, which is what I'm seeking here, just for guidance going forward. And I think for posterity, quite frankly, I think it's good for the town to have your opinions on this going forward for all to know and to rely upon.
All right. So thank you, Attorney Baldwin. This is Alex Trembecki again. I just, for the record, I asked Attorney Baldwin about whether or not there exist any existing town attorney opinions or ethics opinions on this, and he's already answered that by saying his research shows that there's none. And I also asked if there's been any actual instances or practices that have been adopted by the town as it relates to this particular situation. And I believe he has indicated that there's no real record of this sort of thing occurring, which is hence the reason for the request for the opinion. So again, just going back, so our record is clear. What we're looking at and evaluating this under is Article 11, the Standards of Conduct. 11.2 specifically talks about conflicts of interest, and 11.3 talks about disclosure of interest. So with that said, I'll open it up to questions or comments, and I think Commissioner Cantor, you had some questions?
Sure. So I had a few questions. Now, the first thing is, obtaining records of other informal opinions or opinions of the Ethics Commission from previously. Is there like a database that's organized, maybe the town clerk's office or something like that, where we can look at previous opinions of the Ethics Commission or town attorney?
Yeah, so that's a good point. This is Attorney Baldwin. That's a very good point because I am aware of Betsy Brown having a file on various issues that have been brought up, but they usually deal with questions regarding process and not necessarily ethics issues. So I'm familiar that she has records of that nature, but it's a good place for us to go. And I confess I have not asked her myself, so that's probably a good idea. I don't.
Because my point is, stare decisis. We want to take a look at what's been decided previously, before we make another decision where maybe the commission ruled differently on that topic or that issue, or we can extrapolate one from another. And I think that would be something that's important for us to consider. Obviously the town code is kind of vague. I know there's a charter revision commission that's going on right now. Maybe I don't know how far along down the process that is, but while I was looking at the code, I said, gee, maybe somewhere along the lines of what we need to do, there could be some revisions. And one of the things I noticed was, not looking to give anyone a hard time, but I didn't see where there's the authority of a town attorney to ask for an opinion. And not that I have an issue with that, but if we're following the rules, it does talk about who can ask for an advisory opinion. And it seems like, principal officers of a department, members of a town authority, which look like it's, like a housing authority. That's what they mean by authority. But I don't see where it's a town attorney. Now, we can always go back and have somebody else ask for it, but I just think if we're following the process and following the town charter, I just didn't see in it where the town attorney could ask for an opinion, which seemed odd to me. So maybe I'm missing something in the town charter, but just as a jurisdictional issue, I just want to bring that up because I don't want to not follow proper procedures.
Brian,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I took a look at that today because I was also concerned that we follow. And again, this is Alex Trembecki, that we follow the process. And I think you can read paragraph 10.15B4 to say where it says, upon the request of a principal officer of a department or any member of a town authority board, et cetera, certainly Attorney Baldwin, as the town attorney, is the principal officer of the law department, if you will. So I read that and thought and interpreted that to mean we do have jurisdiction to entertain this request. So I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, but it just seemed to me that, as the head of the law department, he has standing to request this.
Yeah, the only thing is there's no real law department. There's, like if you have a city of Bridgeport, they have a legal department where they're all on staff. But my understanding is that the way we do it in Fairfield and maybe some other towns is that it's an independent law office and that person is hired and they bill hourly. It's not like they're salaried, and that's the only thing. I would just throw it back to our town attorney for an opinion on that. Just trying to. You saw the same issue, and I'm coming out with a different conclusion based on my reading, and I guess reasonable minds can differ.
This is Attorney Baldwin. If I could speak to this question.
Sure.
Number one, there is without any question that I am a town officer pursuant to the charter. That is stated very clearly throughout the charter. And number two, I am also charged pursuant to 9.3 of the charter with interpreting the charter and making judgment calls, so to speak. And it is my judgment call that I am authorized, and the charter authorizes you to provide me on behalf of the town with the advisory opinions which I've requested, as Alex also explained. So I don't think that, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy or a self-fulfilling situation, because that is one of my responsibilities, that is interpreting the charter, and that is my interpretation. So I think that should take care of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there anyone else who wants to weigh in on this particular point?
I would agree on that point. I concur.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Van Steenberg, and yeah, I would agree along with you, Alex, on that point.
Okay.
And it's Dana Carey. I agree also.
Correct. I do agree also. Section 9.3C1 is exactly that.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Cantor, do you have any further questions, comments that you want to bring up?
No, I just wanted to make sure that we had a ruling on that, and obviously the town attorney did make a ruling on it, so I'm satisfied with that ruling. At this point, just wanted to make sure that was clarified, since obviously I wasn't the only one who picked up on that issue.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments on or thoughts or questions for Attorney Baldwin on the substance, Commissioner Cantor?
And actually, I had one more. The question is the relevance of any state ethics opinions on conflicts of interest that may impact our review for a informal opinion.
Attorney Baldwin, do you have any insight into that? Do they exist, and where would we find them?
I know that there's a state ethics commission, and I have not looked into it because I'm very familiar with the concept of home rule, and this is a situation where I'm quite certain the provisions set forth in our charter regarding ethics and standards of conduct is something which is exquisite home rule considerations. I mean, if there are illegalities, that's one thing, but this is a local matter, and it's set forth in our charter. So I think that we are correct to look to our charter and the standards of conduct for the answers to these questions, and we don't need to go beyond the charter or the ordinance for what that's worth.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, Commissioner Cantor?
No, I think that that's it for now.
Okay.
On my questions.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments for Town Attorney Baldwin?
I have a question, Alex. Nancy Billington.
Sure, go ahead.
So in regard to the scenarios, A and B, you mentioned in A, it would be more a situation where the board member is representing a client and could just recuse themselves, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Scenario B seems a little bit more complicated. I wonder what your research showed, whether scenario B has ever happened, because there's financial gain in winning a bid, right?
Yes.
For that commissioner. So what did you find about that?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at section, bear with me here. If you look at Article 11, 11.2, which we're focusing on C, where it speaks to knowingly have or acquire any financial interest or any personal beneficial interest, direct in any contract or purchase order for any supplies, materials, etc. It references at the very end that in parentheses, unless such interest is acquired through being the lowest responsible bidder after public advertisement. And to me, that seems to be a recognition that would be allowed. And so I don't think there's any question that a member of a board or commission, in light of that language, can put in a bid for an RFP. And my questions go to what then? What measures does that person need to take?
Right.
But again, that's my interpretation of that section of the charter, and here's where it comes more into your purview than mine, in my opinion, because it is a matter of ethical responsibilities, duties, and that is your particular charge in the charter, more specific than the general provision that I am to, give opinions on charter questions in general.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're not, your statement here, if the commission member is allowed to submit a proposal and they win the bid, that, according to your research, is shown to be legitimate, but the question is, can they remain on the board, or if they recuse themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of, there's nothing specific in the charter or the town code that addresses this question. Maybe to Commissioner Cantor's point, it would be appropriate then to go outside and look at other opinions from the State Ethics Commission, perhaps, on topics such as that.
Okay.
In the absence of anything specific here, so I think that's a good point that Commissioner Cantor made. Not in terms of your ability to issue an opinion one way or the other, but rather in maybe enabling you to make a reasoned decision.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Billington?
No, thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions or comments for Attorney Baldwin?
I just had a quick question, and that is on the charter revision that we have now. Is there anything in the revisions dealing with the provisions we'd have to look at? So is there anything in there that may be relevant to our discussion today? I mean, it hasn't passed yet, obviously, but is there anything in our ethics section or code of conduct that we may want to take note of?
Sorry.
Commissioner Trembicki here. I'm not sure that anything that's even being discussed in a charter revision commission would be really relevant to our consideration. I mean, I think if we issue an opinion based upon what the current charter, don't forget, the charter revision is a process. It's got to go through and be approved. It's got to be voted on by the RTM. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Baldwin, it's got to go on the ballot, does it not?
That's correct, Attorney Baldwin here. But if I could just quickly answer the question, because I think it's an easy one to answer. As a regular attendee of those meetings as town attorney, I can tell you that the attorney we hired for this, Steve Mednick, is of the opinion that we have a very robust standard of conduct and ethics provisions in our town charter, and it was the consensus, although it has not been decided ultimately, that they were unlikely to touch anything in the ethics section of the charter. So that's the short answer. But
yeah, I was just more just asking for informational purposes rather than I'm going to go off of something obviously it hasn't been passed. I was just curious. Yeah,
and so this is Attorney Baldwin again. This is the provisions that you're reviewing are likely to remain intact.
Okay.
My best guess.
And this is Commissioner Van Steenbergen, and my feeling is, Attorney Baldwin, is that you've asked us to review the charter as it stands now, and I think that's a challenge. That's the challenge that we'll undertake going here. If something changes later on, then I guess we would address that down the road. But right now, this is the way it currently stands, and we'll address it together.
Any other further questions or comments for Attorney Baldwin? I just have one, Attorney Baldwin. Again, it goes back to, you touched on it briefly, but if your job as town attorney is to interpret the charter, doesn't this really fall within your purview as opposed to ours?
I think it could arguably be the case, but I'm one person, and you're the Ethics Commission, and my responsibilities under that broad section of the charter are, not nearly as specific as your role under the charter. So it was my thought that it would be wise and it would be in the public's best interest to have this commission render opinions on the questions presented rather than just relying upon my thoughts and opinions alone. I'm happy to share my thoughts and opinions with you, but I think that it's a good use of your commission and your area of expertise.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Town Attorney Baldwin? Okay. Are there any members of the public who'd like to, through the commission, ask a question of Attorney Baldwin? Are there any members of the public on the call? Sounds like it's not. Okay. So it seems to me the next step would be for us as commissioners to discuss this and how we want to handle it going forward. I think one of the things that I heard is that we should do some sort of research into the town clerk's records to make sure that there's nothing out there already in the concept of stare decisis that Commissioner Cantor mentioned. Stare decisis meaning following precedent. And if there is precedent out there, that we should be mindful of it. And before we render an opinion, I think that would be a wise thing for us to do before we really kind of debate this and figure out how we want to handle it. But I'm open to hearing what other people have to say about it. Anyone?
I think it would be helpful, Alex, to do just that, to do a little research on a broader scale than our town charter, right?
Yeah, I would assume, Commissioner Cantor, you agree with that approach, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone
Agreed
else?
from Dana Carey.
Okay. Commissioner Van
Alex,
Steenbergen?
sorry, excuse me.
Greg? You there?
It makes sense. It makes complete sense to me.
Okay. Back to Attorney Baldwin, is there a way for us, how would we go about doing this? Would we request it? I can send an email or a letter to the town clerk. Would that be the most efficient way to handle this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I could do the same thing, but again, this is under your purview. So
yeah, it should come from us. So
I think good, and by all means reference, incorporate my questions presented, and we'll take care of it.
All right. Well, why don't we do that? And then once we get a response one way or the other, I guess probably the next step would be to have another meeting, reconvene, and then decide how we want to go forward. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, I just had one question before we would be breaking, though, if I may,
Sure.
Chairman.
Sure.
When I was thinking about these two questions, my thought process is, while we do have the ability to make these advisory opinions, the question is my concern is that we issue an advisory opinion, and someone says we relied on that advisory opinion, but we didn't have all the facts, that this was a little different situation. And when it comes to, like a soil expert, I think we all know the elephant in the room. My concern is because of some of the challenges that we have. I mean, we had in this town a horrible ethical breach, and obviously we're not privy to everything that is being discussed and how far it goes. But I have some concerns about issuing an advisory opinion. I mean, particularly in scenario B, I think I had heard some concerns about it was a little bit more of a complicated fact pattern. and there's certain things that have me bothered by both of these situations, and then looking at, a cursory look at, the standard we have to go by, and I have some concerns about, which way it may be leaning, but does that feel right? So those are a couple of my concerns in giving that kind of an advisory opinion. I mean, that we are charged with doing them, but by the same token, courts don't give advisory opinions, and judges try and keep away from that, I think probably because of that reason. So that's kind of just my talking off the top of my head and just throwing out some of my concerns, since we have everybody, including the town attorney here, who posed the question, what's kind of going through my mind and some of my concerns.
All right. Well, duly noted. But I think, again, in terms of how we proceed going forward, I would suggest, I think it makes sense for us to gather as much information as we can, and then we'll take up these questions and decide how to act or not. Your point is well taken. We could choose not to act, I suppose, or decide that it's not within our jurisdiction or within our purview. I mean, I think it is within our purview, but we can always choose, my sense is that at some point when we achieve whatever consensus we achieve, that there will be a draft letter written that we'll get an opportunity to weigh in on, and we can make it, if the commission is not comfortable with something that's too broad or too narrow, we can try to hash that through.
I also want to bring up a point. I think we have 45 days from the submission to respond, if I'm not mistaken. And with the holidays coming up and all that, just want to make sure that we don't miss that date. And if there's an ability to get an extension, since we have a town attorney on the phone for an opinion on that, I just want to make sure we don't miss that deadline.
Well, I think it's 45 days. The commission shall either render the opinion or advise as to when the opinion shall be rendered. So that gives us some wiggle room.
Yeah, this is Attorney Baldwin again. I don't think that presents any issues based on the nature of my questions being hypothetical and not specific to any particular situation. And so I think you're fine in that regard. If I could also remind the commission of perhaps also looking at the State Ethics Commission for any opinions that they may have issued that may provide some guidance, or maybe you want to do that in the next step. That's certainly up to you.
Does that conflict, though, with home rule?
Sorry?
I didn't mean to interrupt. I should go through the chair. If the chair may let me entertain a question or a comment. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I took a look at the state ethics, and it looks like, now I'm looking at a section here on post-state employment. I think they have a much stricter standard than we do. So, and you had made a comment about home rule, and that was a very good point. So it may be hard to look at the state when their standard, I think, may be more strict than what we have in our town charter.
Okay. Jim Baldwin here again, and Commissioner Cantor, I think you nailed it exactly. That's why maybe they're not going to give you any help. But I don't know, because I haven't made the inquiry. But the standard should be based on this language, certainly, and not any written state ethics standards. I'm just thinking that perhaps in their opinions they will make reference to some broader, principles that may give you some guidance, or maybe not.
Okay, just this is Commissioner Trembicki again, Chairman Trembicki. Just to be clear, I just want to clear up the record. When I was reading from the code, the Ethics Commission 10.15b, powers and duties, Ethics Commission this is procedure, subsection C2, on request for advisory opinions within 45 days from the receipt of a request for an advisory opinion, the Ethics Commission shall either render the opinion or advise as to when the opinion shall be rendered. So I think we've got time. I just want to, and again, hearing it from the town attorney, I think we're in good shape in that regard. I just want the record to be clear on that. Okay, so I will send a letter or email to the town clerk requesting records that may exist in her department or under her purview as to some of these questions that are being raised. And then I suggest that we'll have another meeting in light of the holiday season, probably the first week of January, before we'll be able to get back to this. Make sense?
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
I concur.
Okay. All right. With that, then, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Dana Carey.
All right.
Who made the motion, Chairman?
I guess I did.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank
Agreed.
you, everyone.
Okay.
Very much.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.